is confined to the gross world, the consciousness of the soul cannot make use of its subtle and mental bodies directly.
Directly. It cannot make use directly, just the way as we make use of the gross actions directly.
The soul becomes conscious of these bodies and experiences the corresponding impressions of these bodies through the corresponding spheres of the subtle and mental worlds only when full consciousness, which is conscious only of the gross at this stage, turns inwards towards itself, and the process of the involution of consciousness begins.
In other words, elsewhere Baba says that we are looking, the flashlight of consciousness is focused outside, without, or everything gross, gross, gross. And with the experiencing, we call it 84 lakhs of births and death, with the experiencing, the grossness of the gross conscious, of the gross samskaras, gradually becomes less and less. And as it becomes less and less, the flashlight is now gradually focusing within. That is where we say that the hold of the gross conscious samskaras is now gradually diminishing. It is getting weaker and weaker, looser and looser, finer and finer, thinner and thinner. And that is where the involutionary process starts. Involutionary process means the flashlight is now not focusing without, but it is focusing within. Gradually it is seeing within. That is the involutionary journey or treading the spiritual path with the first plane of consciousness. It starts with the first plane of consciousness.
This becomes possible only when the consciousness of the individualized soul becomes satiated with the incessant experience of the varied and innumerable impressions of the material or gross life, and only when it has suffered oscillations between the opposites of pain and pleasure for what may seem interminable ages through the unfailing chain of births and deaths in the process of reincarnation.
That means there are so many, I call it thappar, thud, innumerable, that you get satiated, you get fed up, you feel that you have seen it all. And when will you feel you have seen it all? When your samskaras are becoming thinner and thinner, finer and finer, that way.
In the stage of evolution of consciousness, the winding process of impressions, sanskaras, is at work with a view to evolving consciousness, developing higher and higher types of gross forms.
That means we have seen that earlier, that winding of samskaras starts from the very beginning of the evolution of consciousness and ends at the first human form. So here Baba says that in the stage of evolution of consciousness, the winding process of impressions, samskaras, is at work with a view to evolving consciousness, developing higher and
higher types of gross forms.
Go ahead.
In the human stage, the fully evolved consciousness remains, but the grip of impressions, sanskaras, begins to loosen and thin out as a result of continuous jolts experienced by the consciousness of the soul through the seemingly unending chain of births and deaths in the reincarnation process.
Every birth and death, there is a jolt, dhakka. वो क्या बोलते हैं, जोर का धक्का, धीरे से, like that. So every birth and death there is a jolt, and with every jolt there is a loosening of samskaras, and 84 lakhs is quite a number to get all those dhakkas, all the time. And that births and deaths. So now a time has come when almost, or you can say, all the gross impressions have been almost over. So now we are going to what is known as state number 7. So now the consciousness is gradually focusing on itself. That is state 7, God in the state of spiritually advanced soul. That means now we are treading, just entering the first plane of consciousness after all that thappars we have got.
God in the state of spiritually advanced souls, state 7. After a long drawn out struggle with the life of the gross senses in the gross world, the consciousness of the soul begins to get drawn towards the self of the soul rather than to remain focused on the gross body and its gross environment.
So now gradually the flashlight is wanting to focus on who am I, the soul, the self.
After a number of births and deaths, the gross conscious human soul is at last inevitably drawn to embark upon the process which will lead the man ultimately to the goal of God realization in human form.
Continue.
The consciousness of the soul, therefore, begins to withdraw itself from the gross. Soul is thus said to advance spiritually through the subtle and mental spheres. The subtle sphere or the subtle world is the domain of the first 3 planes of the involving consciousness of the soul. The 4th plane lies between the subtle sphere and the mental sphere, and the mental sphere contains the 5th and 6th planes.
So the sphere or bhuvan, also called bhuvan, is equal to the world. There is a subtle world and there is a mental world. In some of the literature, Baba talks about the subtle world containing 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th bhumika, or what we call as planes. And then 5th and 6th in the mental. Like in this place, Baba says the first 3, 1st, 2nd and 3rd planes are purely in the subtle world. The 4th is like a threshold, a go-between the subtle and the mental, and the 5th and the 6th are purely in the mental world.
This 7th state of God comprises the advance by the pilgrims on the spiritual path through the subtle and mental spheres.
That means if you cross over the subtle and the mental sphere, you go into the sphere of reality, of truth, from duality to unity, from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge, from dream to awake state, all that, from Dvaita, I said that, Advait. So that is from going from the subtle and, when you pass over the subtle and the mental spheres, which means when you pass over the 6 planes, then you go into the 7th, which is unity, which is oneness, unitary.
The greater the advance, the greater the involution of consciousness. When the soul becomes conscious of the subtle sphere through the subtle body, it identifies itself with the subtle body, and when it is conscious of the mental sphere through the mental body, it identifies itself with the mental body, just as it identified itself with the gross body when it was conscious of the gross sphere through the gross body.
Right now, if I say I, what do I identify myself with? With the gross body. Because I am gross, right? So if I progress into the subtle body, I will not identify myself with the gross body because the consciousness of the gross is not there at all. I will identify myself with the energy body, with the subtle sphere. What is that? Since I have not reached, I cannot explain what that is. In the same way, somebody who is in the mental sphere will identify itself with the mental body. That way, just as how we identify with the gross body when we are in the gross sphere.
The spiritual progress of the soul through these spheres is entirely in imagination.
All this is nothing but imagination.
What an imagination.
Okay, go ahead.
The pilgrim's progress in the involution of his consciousness consists in replacing one realm of imagination for a better and higher level of imagination, right from the first through the sixth plane of involving consciousness.
It's only that one imagination replaces another imagination, which is a higher imagination. But ultimately, all the way through the sixth plane of that is in duality, it is nothing but imagination, imagination, imagination.
In the seventh plane, the involving process is complete. Imagination comes to an end, and reality is realized and is no longer a concept.
It is not a concept, it's a reality, it's a
Captain.
truth, it's the experience of the I am God state.
Those who enter the spiritual path and tread upon it without the help of a master to guide them very often get lost in the labyrinths of sights and illuminations and have little or no chance of redeeming themselves from that position. The enchantment on the spiritual
One
path
minute.
is so
That-
great.
Sorry. That means here what Baba is emphasizing on is those who enter the spiritual path and tread upon it without the help of the master to guide them, they get lost like this. And there are many people who get lost like this, and many of them, we call them as musts. They are musts. Because they at that time when they entered the spiritual path, they did not have a master. And many people run after the must, revere the must, bow down and perfectly okay, to each his own. But state of must is not something to be aspired for. In other words, they get spiritually intoxicated with their whatever experiences and love for God, that they have lost either partially or completely the consciousness of their own being and the consciousness of the gross world. And that is not something to be, they should be drunk and yet very straight. That is the salukiyat and not the mazubiyat kind of thing. So in other words, masters, but we have seen Baba, he has really, I don't know about the past, but Baba did say that Rama did some work in the jungles with the mast. Jesus Christ did a little work. But I am nobody to say, but the way Baba has helped the musts, and worked on the must, I am not sure whether anybody in the earlier Advent has worked. And there's a book called The Wayfarers. If you read that, we realize Baba would spare no pains to run after the must, to seek out a must and serve the must and help the must come on the path, And also, Baba, for his own reason, that is what I understand, uses the pure energy, the unselfish energy of the spiritual energy of the must for his own spiritual work. And that could be one reason why some of those musts, the moment they see Baba, they would run away from Baba. Ye to bahut kaam karayega hamare se. Baba will make me work a lot. So these are instances where from a little experience we can think that really Baba is squeezing them and using them for his own inner spiritual work. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
When the disciple is ready, the master appears.
Huh?
When the disciple,
But you say, na?
when the disciple is ready, the master appears.
Soumya is prompting me to say, when the disciple is ready, the master
Then how
appears.
can there be a concept of must? Suddenly this thought came. So
Okay.
he'll say this, why didn't you discuss at home?
Okay. Go ahead.
But Cyrus, must all the intoxicated souls in the love,
love
of
for
God.
God.
But even advanced souls are the same, no?
But they are
got
they
a
are
master.
poised. Like you have 3 pegs of rum and you don't
Yeah.
talk, you don't wobble like this. You see why? Because you are a salik. You want to be a salik, isn't it? In other words, okay, Baba explains in some way, that it's like people are in a train and people get off the train but they are still on the platform. So when the whistle to eat batata pav, whatever, pav bhaji, whatever. The moment the whistle goes on, they'll again jump on the train and get off the next station. But there are some who get off the station, railway station, and venture into the towns and the cities, the mela. And there is so much of enchantment, enticing enchantment, like giant wheel and merry-go-round and stuff like that. This is not Baba's words. So you get lost in that. And once you get lost in that, you don't come back to the station in order to progress. So they get stuck up over there. And Baba would go in search of them, serve them in his own way, spiritual way, and try to help them in their spiritual ongoing. Your question is that even, see, saints who are saints, they are the ones who are also deeply in love with God, but they have maintained their poise. They have not got so intoxicated as to, don't know what is happening, where it's happening, like that.
I think in your earlier sessions you told us that those must think that that station is
They've
the
arrived.
ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
they've
is
arrived.
also one of the things.
Yes.
They feel that they have
They've
arrived. Because they are in that hall, as they say, that is mostly between the third and the fourth plane. They are in that, Baba calls it a hall, where Harriet, they call it a
Hayrat.
Okay, Hayrat. Sorry if I pronounced wrongly. Where whatever you are doing, supposing I am like this, now I have gone into Hayrat. So unless and until a perfect master comes and shakes me out of it, it may take a few minutes, a few days, a few weeks, a few months, a few years. Baba says even a lifetime. You are in that state. You are stuck up in there. And Muhammad was in that state.
Muhammad the Mast.
Muhammad the Mast was not, Muhammad the Mast was in that state. So that is a place which is a little tricky between the third and the fourth plane, where you get stuck up in that. Yes, so what you say, and there are people, why even on the planes sometimes, not necessarily must, where a little experience, supposing I close my eyes and I see all kinds of circles, or if I just think it should rain now, and all of a sudden it starts raining. Or if there is a dry well and I say, I should have water in the well, the water fills, oh wow, I think that I have reached, I have arrived, I have become one with God. And that is where you don't progress further, because there's a long, long way to
But
go.
now, when I think of something, it happens, how we say loosely, oh, you manifested it.
Correct. But that is, that you have manifested it, but you are not saying I am God, or I have reached, or I have arrived, or I have reached the goal. No, you don't think that way. Correct, yeah.
So that's why the must should read God Speaks.
Ma-
No, if you read, you won't become a must.
Thanks to you that you are recording all these things. And in the next, whatever you call it, the
don't
must will be given this recording. Please go and see. You have not yet arrived. You have still a long way to go. All right.
That is why Baba wants us to read, so that we don't get to must. We take his name and we immediately go to him.
Okay.
Eight.
Mike.
True. So true.
It is 5:58. Don't start a new paragraph. If you are in between the paragraph, we'll complete the para.
Yeah.
Are you in between? No. Okay.
So if it is in his plan, you'll become a must only. Then you can't do anything then.
Correct.
You read gospel.
Correct, Baba, correct.
When
But he
Baba
can do
was asked
anything.
something like this, about the divine plan, and then Baba brilliantly said that the divine plan is
That there is
that there is no plan. So it is all very dichotomy, as we say. He will say this also and he will say that also, and yet both would be correct. Both would be the truth. So there's no way in which we know many. That we can go on discussing the free will and the destiny and stuff like. What are you page on?
No.
We are on which page?
We are on page 182.
We are ending on page number 182. That helps us to, Okay. So now we are meeting on Sunday, the 30th of June 2024, same time, same place, 4:30 p.m. Samadhi time. Sorry? Why? Because you are not there. You can always look it up. I said you can always look it up online. Yeah. Okay, sure. Thank you, Baba, for this wonderful session, and thanks to all of you wonderful people for asking such intelligent questions. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Thank you, Baba. And thanks Naman, thanks Rakesh, and thanks Farzeen, and thanks Rochit. These are our 4 pillars, you know.
Yeah.
If they are not there, then this would not happen. Thank you very much. Jai Baba.